should win MVP, folks? That's the question we're talking about today. Who will win it? Well, maybe they're one and the same. We'll find out. And in that MVP race, where does our beautiful boy Joseph Lee Burrow fall? I'm going to try to answer those questions today. You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you very much for joining me. We will get into the Bengals defensive coordinator search just a tad bit and talk about the playoffs a lot as the divisional round is coming up. While I was looking into this, just the fact that Joe Burrow finished number one in passing yards, number one in thrown touchdowns, and now almost half of the AFC gets into the playoffs. The fact that they missed the playoffs I know that we've all known this, but when I was trying to break down everything to decide who I think should win MVP, the facts that struck me, that if you would have told me in August that Joe Burrow would lead the league in passing yards, lead the league in touchdowns thrown, and just throw 9 interceptions on the season. If you would have told me all those things, I would have said, well, the Bengals they're getting a home game in the playoffs. Maybe they're the 2 seed, the 3 seed, whatever. If you would have told me, that's going to happen on the miss of playoffs, I would have bet my house you were going to be wrong. Just another highlight of what an awful, awful failure of a season it was for certain parts of the Cincinnati Bengals team. And really, they didn't make the playoffs, so the whole team. It drives me crazy. But the good news is they've got the piece you need in place to go win a Super Bowl in this league. And they seem to understand what a failure of the season it was. So I just had to get that off my chest. Just had to get that out there. A little bit of therapy on In the Jungle today. That's really probably what I'm here for, right? So my wife doesn't want to listen to me talk about all this, so I do it to you fine folks. I appreciate you tuning in. So let's get into it. Who should be the most valuable player? The NFL's 2024 MVP. The same, over the past 6 years, I think the same 3 guys have won it. Mahomes has won 2. Lamar has won 2. Aaron Rodgers has won 2. And I think the last guy to win one before them was Tom Brady. I think that was 2017. Is that right? Yeah. So let's get into this. Let's get into this and figure out, will someone break it? Will Lamar add a third? I think we all know Aaron Rodgers sure as hell not in the conversation, and neither is Patrick Mahomes, who is the 1 seed and might win his 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, which he will certainly take over a Most Valuable Player award. However, he's not in the conversation this year. So I think there are really 3 or 4 guys in the conversation. The 2 guys who are certainly in the conversation and who will almost certainly finish in the top 2 or 3, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Let's start with Josh Allen because I think he's the favorite. Here's the skinny on him, right? And I hope this isn't boring on a show/podcast, but Josh Allen went 13-4. He is the number 2 seed. His Buffalo Bills are. He threw for 3,700 yards, only 28 touchdowns, 7th in the NFL, but only threw 6 interceptions. He ran, however, for 531 yards and 12 touchdowns, which was 9th in the league. So he was top 10 in passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns this year. So that's a total of 4,262 yards, 40 touchdowns. He only lost 1 fumble this year, so 7 turnovers. Now, here's what I would say about him. He lost Stephon Diggs, his number 1 receiver. Bad. He does play in the AFC East, however. With Tua out a lot of the season and with the Patriots and Jets stinking, that makes things a little easier. So that's where he's at, right? 4,200 total yards. We'll call it 4,300 total yards. 7 turnovers, 40 total touchdowns. The guy he's really up against here is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, he's the 3 seed, 12-5. 6th in the NFL in passing yards with 4,172. 2nd in thrown touchdowns, which for me, Lamar Jackson finishing 2nd, tied for 2nd actually, in the NFL with 41 touchdowns thrown. That's a hell of a feat for him. For a guy that a lot of people said he gets where he is because of his rushing ability, the fact that only Joe Burrow threw more touchdowns than him this year, impressive. And oh, by the way, only 4 interceptions. So if you're a Bengals fan listening to this podcast, which most of you are, this is bad news. Lamar has figured some things out. Now look, I have said in the past, including this season, that Lamar's throwing ability is not quite what some of the other guys in that same top tier are. I think he hit a new level this year. We saw it in the past, right? The evidence was there. When they were down and behind in games, he simply wasn't great. When his rushing ability was taken away, he wasn't great, and that's fine. That's fine. That does not make him any less of a quarterback. It was what it was. I think he overcame that hurdle this year. I think he is now in that top tier, not only as a quarterback in general, but as a guy throwing the ball. He threw just 4 interceptions this year, and here's the big one. He ran for 915 yards, only 4 touchdowns on the ground, but here's the stat I want to throw at you when it comes to Lamar rushing the ball. 6.6 yards per carry, number 1 in the NFL amongst those who with more than 100 carries this year. So about 5,100 total yards, 5,087, 45 touchdowns. He did lose 4 fumbles in addition to his 4 picks, so 8 turnovers. That's 1 more than Josh Allen. And then here's the other guy we'll talk about, Joe Burrow, who his team finished 8th. The Cincinnati Bengals did. They went 9-8. Burrow, first in the NFL, 4,918 passing yards. First in the NFL with 43 touchdowns thrown. He threw 9 interceptions on the season. He ran for just 201 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is, fine. I was kind of surprised that Lamar only ran for 2 more touchdowns than Joe did on the season, but I don't think anyone thinks that Joe Burrow, he can run. He can get away. We know that. He's great at escaping in the pocket. He avoids a lot of sacks, and he kind of has to. But yeah, you get it. So now he is the only quarterback here that we're talking about with a defense that finished outside of the top 20 in both yards and points allowed. He also has significantly better receivers than either of the other 2 quarterbacks. Zay Flowers is excellent. Mark Andrews is excellent. But I don't think anyone is putting that duo in the same tier as Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, not to mention our boy Andre Yosivas and our boy Mike Gesicki. All right? So Joe Burrow finishes with 5,100 total yards, 45 total touchdowns. So him and Lamar really about the same there when it comes to yards and touchdowns and turnovers, right? Like literally rushing and passing yards combined, Burrow has 33 more. They're tied for touchdowns with 45, and Joe Burrow had 1 more turnover. So really similar there. The big difference, obviously, 1 is a 2 seed and 1 is a 3 seed with the Ravens, and 1 missed the playoffs. So those are our 3 guys. The other 2 people who I would put on my ballot, one would be Saquon Barkley, and we'll talk about him more in a second, and the other would be Baker Mayfield, which is going to drive Browns fans crazy when Baker Mayfield gets some MVP votes. Remember, the voting, you vote in tiers now. So you put 5 people on your ballot. The first guy gets, 10 points? Yeah. 10 points for your first place, 5 for your second, and then 3, 2, 1 for your other ones. I think Baker Mayfield's going to get some 5th place votes, maybe a 4th place vote. I don't think anyone thinks he is a real MVP contender, but he's going to get some votes. Baker Mayfield is a 3 seed, 10-7, 4,500 yards passing, 3rd in the NFL. Pretty good. 41 touchdowns, same as Lamar Jackson. Only Joe Burrow threw more touchdowns than Baker Mayfield this year. 16 interceptions. That's what really gets him. That's tied for the worst in the NFL. He also fumbled the ball 9 times. He didn't lose all of them, but the turnovers really got Baker. Now, the majority of his interceptions came in wins. I think he threw 9 of his 16 picks in games that they won. So they didn't absolutely kill him, but still not good. He did run for 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also plays in the worst division in the NFL, in my opinion, in the NFC South, so that helps. So I'll get to Baker in a second. But to me, I think it's insane that we're talking about Baker Mayfield as, or at least I am, and I think you kind of have to be if you really look into this. Outside of those 3 elite top-tier quarterbacks, if you're voting if the MVP were just a quarterback award, he would have to finish top 5 this year. He would. They were the 3 seed. I know they lost in the playoffs. This is not a playoff award. This award was voted on before the playoffs started. So they went 10-7. Yeah, the division sucks. But still, middle of the pack defense. It's not like he was playing with a top 10 defense. Not even I think they were 16th in defense. So shout out to Baker. Browns fans, sorry, not sorry. You signed old Deshaun for $230 million. Is Baker the answer? I don't know, but he certainly, that's a conversation for a different day. But if Baker keeps this ascent and gets those turnovers under control, that's going to end up right up there with the Browns not drafting Ben Roethlisberger. Anyways, and then the other guy that I think you have to put in the conversation, and everyone is going to put in the conversation, is Saquon Barkley. Eagles are the 2 seed, 14-3. Saquon rushes for 2,005 yards. He had a great season. Now, here's my issue with Saquon Barkley. Why is he in this conversation, but Derrick Henry is not? Derrick Henry ran for 3 more touchdowns than Saquon. Saquon ran for just 85 more yards. They both went to awesome teams with strong offensive lines with really good quarterbacks. They were put into a system where they were set up to succeed. But Saquon's getting a lot of MVP buzz, and he should. But Derrick Henry's right there with him. Literally has more touchdowns. Has 85 yards less. Not that big of a difference. I'm fine if you want to put Saquon in the MVP conversation. He's in mine. He's going to be on my ballot. Derrick Henry is not. And, so maybe, but mine's less about, because I don't think either guy should win MVP, but I don't see how Saquon is so heavily in the discussion and Derrick Henry isn't. Especially when you consider that the NFC East, where Saquon is playing, he goes against the Cowboys, Giants, and the upstart Commanders, who are the 7 seed, and they're solid. But Derrick Henry plays against a tougher division. He was playing a first-place schedule. Eagles played a second-place schedule. It is what it is. I don't think either guy's going to win MVP, but I just don't get how Saquon's in the conversation and Derrick Henry is not. And by the way, if you could do a combination MVP award, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery would be the winners because they have been awesome for the Lions. They've combined for like 2,800 touchdowns. That'd be cool. 28 touchdowns, over 2,000 yards themselves. But yeah. So anyways, that's a discussion for a different day. Here's how my ballot would go. Number 1, to me, would be Josh Allen. Josh Allen, I think, he will win the MVP this year. I think he will. I'm not saying he will. I think he will. And if I were voting, and I should be, honestly, he would be number 1 on my ballot. He does more with less. Or he doesn't do more with less. He has much less, right? Like Joe Burrow, people want to put him in the conversation. You can't give it to a guy who missed the playoffs unless it was just absolutely insane. There would have to be such insane circumstances, and having a crappy defense does not qualify. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. But Josh Allen did not have a 1,000-yard receiver. Did not have, just the weapons that Josh Allen has versus what Joe Burrow has and versus what Lamar Jackson has, just not equal. Simple as that. And that's not to say the Bills have bad weapons, but Khalil Shakir is your number 1 receiver. He had like 800 yards. Lamar, Burrow, both have Pro Bowl receivers. Lamar has another MVP candidate, should be like a top 6, 7 guy in Derrick Henry, a Hall of Fame running back. Not to mention, probably the most well-run organization in football in Baltimore. So he's got that going for him. So Josh Allen's number 1 to me. The big split for me comes between 2 and 3. So I went with Joe Burrow as my number 2. On my ballot, Joe Burrow finishes 2nd. Lamar Jackson will finish 3rd. Here's what that came down to. So I've got Josh Allen at 1. He got the 2 seed in the AFC. They were playing a first-place schedule. He lost his number 1 receiver. He does not have nearly the weapons the other guys have who are competing for this MVP award. Number 2 on my ballot would be Joe Burrow. So number 2 came down to Lamar and Burrow. The weapons kind of cancel each other out. Like, Burrow has the best receiver in football. Lamar has a Hall of Fame running back in Derrick Henry. Burrow has T. Higgins, who's awesome. You got Zay Flowers, who's an upstart guy. Mark Andrews. You got those. Let's cancel those out. Well, you can say the head-to-head. Ravens went 2-0. Well, yeah, they did, but it really didn't have much to do with the quarterbacks. It had to do that the Bengals missed a field goal to beat Baltimore the first time. The second time, Burrow's helmet gets nearly decapitated off his head, and they miss it to the point that they're thinking about replay reviews for face mask in 2025. That's how bad of a no call it was. So, yeah, did they go 2-0 against them? Yeah. Should they have? Yeah. That's a question for another time, but I don't think you can look at that 2-0 record as the be-all, end-all when it comes to Lamar versus Burrow in the MVP race. And the other thing is valuable. Let's look. What's the definition of valuable? I looked it up. I have the internet. Having desirable or esteemed characteristics or quality, or of great use or service. Let's go with that second one. Of great use or service. Ravens are a more stable franchise than the Bengals. We can admit that, right? They are better run. They are arguably the best run franchise in the NFL. Bengals, not bad, but probably more middle of the pack, right? What has Burrow done for his franchise versus what Lamar has done for the Ravens? That's what it comes down to for me. The Ravens consistently in the playoff hunt prior to Lamar Jackson becoming their quarterback. And he's great, and he's won 2 MVPs, and he might win more. But this year, for the 2024 MVP, I think Joe Burrow was more valuable to his team than Lamar Jackson was to his. And that's not to say, I'm still putting Lamar third on my theoretical ballot. But to me, Burrow elevates his team a lot more this year than Lamar did. Simple as that. And then third's Lamar Jackson. We've been over it. We know how excellent he is. I think he is already, to me, in that conversation as the best playmaker in NFL history. You think of him, you think of other guys like Barry Sanders, who just at any moment could make an insane highlight reel and turn a game on its head. He's right there. But to me, Lamar Jackson was the third most outstanding. They should call it that, by the way. They used to call it that prior to like the 60s. It was the most outstanding player award. That's what it should be. Because when you're talking about value, it's a very specific thing. But to me, Lamar Jackson finishes third. And that's awesome. And he'll probably, in the actual voting, finish second. And that's fine too. Fourth, I go with Saquon Barkley. He had a 2,000-yard season. I don't think the Eagles, were 11-6 last year before him. Not a lot of running backs who do what he was able to do and elevate a team the way he was able to. He was probably worth 2 or 3 wins this year. So, and then fifth, I give a nod to Baker Mayfield. I told you the stats already. That locker room loves him. There's been stories about how the transition from Brady to him was pretty cool. Brady is like this. Yeah, I don't think anyone here dislikes Tom Brady. I got no problem with Tom Brady, but Brady was a superstar, different level guy. Baker Mayfield is a have a beer with you after practice guy. And guys love that. Fits in perfect in Tampa. I would put Baker Mayfield fifth on my ballot. And again, I don't know that there'll be some other guys who get votes. And if there was a sixth place, I think mine would go to Derrick Henry. And again, that kind of hurts Lamar Jackson more than anything to me, is he has another MVP candidate right there. And I think you'd say the same for Joe Burrow. I mean, Jamar Chase might get an MVP vote. He's definitely going to get Offensive Player of the Year votes. He should probably win it. Him or Burrow have a really good shot. So we'll see. And I think it'll finish similar to this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Burrow finishes fourth. I would have him second, but I would be surprised if Josh Allen does not win this award. So yeah, that's that. That's my ballot. Josh Allen 1, Joe Burrow 2, Lamar Jackson 3, Saquon Barkley 4, and Baker Mayfield on his fourth team, the former Heisman winner, finishing fifth for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, Josh Allen, better seed, fewer weapons. I kind of talk about Burrow elevating the Bengals versus, Lamar went into such a stable situation. Same for Buffalo, man. Buffalo sucked forever. What Allen and Burrow have done to their franchises, just incredible. Just incredible. So Allen deserves, you can kind of say like they do, when they're talking about the Oscars, the Academy Awards, like people deserve, like Josh Allen deserves, when they're doing the Academy Awards, like sometimes they say like, this guy, how can you not give it to this actor? They've been so good for so long. Josh Allen maybe falls into that category a little bit because his numbers, I told you, fewer total yards, fewer total touchdowns, about the same amount of turnovers, but the weapons, just no weapons. I don't say no weapons, but Khalil Shakir is the number 3 receiver in Cincinnati. He's the number 2 guy in Baltimore. And that's the number 1 guy in Buffalo. No disrespect to him, but what Allen has done, he's put the team on his back, Greg Jennings style. So that's that. That's my ballot. Hope you liked it. And if you didn't, that's okay too. Tell me what yours would be. If you do have anyone who I didn't mention here, that's what I'm really curious to see. Like, to me, as kind of an NFL nerd, I love to go back and look and see who was the fourth place. They've only been doing it this way for a while, but prior to this, I think in 2022 they started doing the ranking voting, put 5 people on your ballot. But prior to this, you would vote for one person, one dude, and I was always curious to go back and see, Carson Palmer on the Cardinals got 4 votes, stuff like that. So if you have any guys who you think should get votes, who I didn't mention here, please tell me, because I love that kind of stuff. So according to Dre Harris of Bengals Talk, which does a great job talking about this team, the The Bengals defensive coordinator search is down to two people. Patrick Graham, who is the Raiders defensive coordinator. I don't know if he was a former linebacker. What did he play? Let's look it up, baby. Right now, Patrick Graham is with the Raiders. And so I looked this up here. Oh, his birthday's coming up. Defensive lineman. He was not a linebacker. He was a linebackers coach with the Patriots on that 2011 team. And then again from 2014 to 2015. So he's coached under Bill Belichick. That's good. Went to Yale. I love that. Love me an Ivy League fella. So yeah, reportedly it's down to Patrick Graham, who is currently the Raiders defensive coordinator, and Al Golden, who will be coaching Monday night in the national championship game. He is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish defensive coordinator. He was a linebacker coach, by the way, on that Bengals Super Bowl team. I'd be happy with either dude. They both kind of seem to fit, And look, we're not going to know until we know either, but there are probably some candidates that you don't feel as good about. I'd feel good with either one of these guys. Both experienced guys. Both have been around and soaked up enough knowledge that you would think they're going to take what the Bengals have and turn them into a formidable unit, something better than what we saw this year. And yeah, we'll see. Neither is a big splashy hire, but neither's anything I think anyone's going to be upset about. And remember, when Lou Anarumo got hired, it wasn't considered a sexy hire. It was kind of that was the only guy who wanted to do it because that 2019 team that Zach Taylor took over, not exactly, not loaded with ingredients for the chef to prep a meal, right? So whoever they get, and maybe it's someone else, we don't know, but it seems like those two guys are certainly on the radar and right in the middle of the radar. So that'll be fun. Excited to see who they get. And then the Bengals defense probably going to have a lot of new players as well. And we'll see. We'll go from there. I want to mention on Wild Card Weekend, and I know I'm not the first to point this out, but it just to make you sick before we get out of here. So the Bengals on November 17th gave up 34 points to the Chargers, formerly of San Diego. This weekend, Wild Card Weekend, the Chargers scored 12 points against the Texans. Bengals gave up 44 to Pittsburgh December 1st, and then just 17 to them the last game of the year. Pittsburgh scored 14. So let's average that out. What's that come up to? 61. So they averaged 30 and a half. They scored half that against Baltimore. They scored 14 points. Denver, they gave up 24 points to the Broncos at home the second to last week of the season. Denver scored 7 points. So if we needed any more justification of just how bad the Bengals defense was, and look, they got it together the last couple weeks. I think anytime you hold a team below, 27 or so with Joe Burrow and that offense, you're going to win a lot of games, as we saw with Denver. But yeah, you saw what those offenses did to the Bengals, and then you saw what they did when they played defenses that were just better than average. And that's all this team needs right now. So if it's Patrick Graham or if it's Al Golden, the bar's really not that high. Just be like 14th, and you can win some games, and you can be a Super Bowl contender with what this team has on offense. So that's all I got for you. This show is called In the Jungle. My name is Matt Edwards. If you like the show, if you're new here, give it a subscription, give it a like, or just don't, and that's fine too. I just hope you liked it. I'm here to spread joy. My name is Matt Edwards. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Edwards. I haven't been on there very much just because, football season's winding down, and I'll get on there on the weekends, but, hang out, live a real life. So that's that. Appreciate everyone tuning in. I'll have an episode out next Friday once again. Maybe we know who the Bengals defensive coordinator is. If we do that, I'm going to try to do these YouTube shorts a little more often, and I'll throw something up on there. So if you go to youtube.com/InTheJunglePod, hit the subscribe button. And then if you have the YouTube app, you can just watch it right on your phone. It's kind of, they're trying to do what TikTok does, which I've never had TikTok. And it seems like TikTok might be banned soon for all the kids. So that'll be on there. Or just, never listen to me again. I'll be all right with that too. All right. Do appreciate you tuning in. We'll do it again next week. The show's called In the Jungle. We'll see you soon.